The night sky above Colorado was clear and filled with stars when everything changed. Dr. Alan Murphy sat alone in the small mountain observatory, his eyes tired from staring at screens for hours. The coffee in his mug had gone cold, but he didn't notice. All his attention was on the strange pattern of signals that had appeared 3 nights ago. "It's still there," he whispered to himself, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. The pattern pulsed on his screen, too regular to be natural, too complex to be a mistake. His heart beat faster as he reached for his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he dialed a number he knew by heart. After 3 rings, a sleepy voice answered. "Diane, it's Alan. You need to come to the observatory right now." "Alan, it's 2 a.m. Dr. Diane Carter's voice was groggy with sleep. "The signal is getting stronger, and I've run every test I can think of. This isn't equipment failure. This isn't a satellite. This is—" He paused, hardly believing what he was about to say. "This is contact." 30 minutes later, Diane stood beside him, her long gray hair hastily pulled into a ponytail, her eyes wide as she looked at the data. "Have you told anyone else?" she asked quietly. Alan shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted you to see it first." Diane sat down heavily in the chair next to him. "If this is real, everything changes. Everything." "I know," Alan said. "I know." By sunrise, they had confirmed the signal was coming from a star system 17 light-years away. By noon, the observatory was filled with government officials in dark suits, all speaking in hushed, urgent tones. By evening, the President of the United States was preparing to address the nation. "My fellow Americans," the President said, standing behind a podium with the presidential seal, "today we have made contact with intelligent life beyond our planet." The news spread across the world like wildfire. People gathered in homes, in bars, in town squares, all watching the same footage, all asking the same questions. Were the aliens friendly? Were they coming to Earth? What did they want? In the days that followed, Alan and Diane barely slept. They worked with a quickly assembled team of scientists and code breakers from around the world. The signal contained data, complex and structured. It took them a week to realize it was a message and another week to begin to understand it. "It's coordinates," Alan explained to the room full of officials. "And there's a message embedded in the signal. It's simple, just 2 words repeated over and over." "What words?" asked a stern-faced woman in a navy suit. Alan looked at Diane, then back at the woman. "Help us." The woman's name was Susan Reeves, newly appointed by the United Nations as the Ambassador for Extraterrestrial Contact. She was smart, tough, and now facing the biggest challenge of her career. "You're sure about this translation?" she asked. "As sure as we can be," Diane answered. "The signal uses mathematical principles as a foundation. Math is universal. They're reaching out to anyone who might hear them, and they're asking for help." Susan nodded slowly. "Then we need to decide how to respond." Over the next month, the world's nations argued about what to do. Some wanted to ignore the message, fearing that any response might lead dangerous aliens to Earth. Others felt a moral duty to help. Scientists were divided. Religious leaders were divided. Everyone had an opinion. At the United Nations, the debate raged for days. Susan Reeves listened to argument after argument, her face showing nothing of her own thoughts. Finally, she called for one more speaker before the vote. Commander Jack Wilson walked to the podium, his back straight, his blue eyes clear. He had been an astronaut for 15 years and was known for his calm under pressure. He had also been selected as the potential leader for any mission to answer the alien call. "Distinguished representatives," he began, his voice steady and sure. "I've spent much of my life looking down at our planet from space. From up there, you don't see borders. You don't see our differences. You see one world, fragile and beautiful." He paused, looking around the room. "Now we know we're not alone. And our neighbors among the stars have asked for our help. This isn't just about them. This is about who we are. Throughout history, we've asked ourselves if we're alone in the universe. Now we know we're not, and our cosmic neighbors need our help. How we respond in this moment will define humanity for generations to come. The room was silent when he finished. Susan Reeves stood up. "We will now vote on Resolution 1042, humanity's response to the extraterrestrial signal." The vote was close, but in the end, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. The months that followed were unlike any in human history. Nations that had been enemies for generations now worked together. The world's best scientists, engineers, and astronauts joined forces. Money that might have gone to weapons now went to spaceships. A new agency was formed, the International Space Agency, ISA, with representatives from every nation on Earth. Their mission was clear but incredibly difficult: build a ship that could travel to the alien world, find out what help they needed, and provide it if possible. In a massive facility in Texas, the ship began to take shape. They called it the ISS Horizon, the first vessel built by humans designed to travel between stars. It would use a new type of engine based on nuclear fusion, powerful enough to push the ship to a significant fraction of the speed of light. Even at such speeds, the journey would take years. The crew would need to use special sleep chambers to survive the trip, putting their bodies in a state-like hibernation for most of the journey. Choosing the crew was another challenge. Thousands of people volunteered, but only 6 would go. Commander Wilson was the obvious choice to lead. With him would be Navigation Officer Maria Rodriguez, a calm, brilliant woman who could plot courses through the stars, Chief Engineer Frank Howard, who understood the ship's systems better than anyone, Medical Officer Dr. Samantha Lee, whose research in suspended animation had made the mission possible, Communications Specialist Daniel Phillips, who had helped decode the alien message, and Science Officer Dr. William Chen, an expert in astrobiology and xenolinguistics. Not everyone on Earth supported the mission. Protests broke out in many cities. Some people feared the aliens had evil intentions. Others thought the money should be spent on Earth's problems. Religious groups debated what the existence of aliens meant for their beliefs. But the work continued. The ship was built, the crew trained, and humanity prepared to take its first steps into the wider galaxy. On the night before launch, Commander Wilson stood alone on the observation deck of the launch facility, looking up at the stars. The door behind him opened and Susan Reeves walked in. "Can't sleep?" she asked. Wilson shook his head. "Too much going through my mind." "Second thoughts?" "No," he said firmly. "Not about going. Just wondering if we'll be enough. If I'll be enough." Susan stood beside him, following his gaze to the stars. "You're carrying the hopes of an entire species, not just those waiting for you 17 light years away, but ours too." Wilson nodded slowly. "No pressure, right?" Susan smiled. "The right person for the job." As dawn broke over Earth, the crew of the ISS Horizon said their goodbyes. They hugged their families one last time. They boarded the ship that would be their home for years to come. And as billions watched on screens around the world, the ship's engines fired, and humanity reached for the stars. The journey had begun. The answer to the call was on its way. The world changed after the decision to answer the alien call. Countries that once pointed weapons at each other now shared their best scientists and resources. The next 18 months were like nothing seen before in human history. Dr. Olivia Grant stood in her lab, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, staring at the glowing blue light of the test reactor. At 36, she was already famous for her work in nuclear fusion. Now she was in charge of creating the engine that would power humanity's first ship to the stars. "Try it again," she said to her team. "Increase power by 5%. The blue glow grew brighter. Numbers flashed on the screens around her. For a moment, everything held steady. Then alarms blared and the light flickered out. Olivia sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. This was the 12th failed test this month. The fusion drive needed to be perfect. Lives depended on it. "We'll try again tomorrow," she told her disappointed team. "We're close, I can feel it." Across the massive complex in Texas, Dr. Peter Novak faced his own challenges. Tall and thin with thick glasses, Peter was working on the sleep chambers, that would keep the crew alive during the long journey to the alien world. The problem is keeping the brain healthy, he explained to Commander Wilson, who had come to check on the progress. We can slow the body down, lower temperature, reduce oxygen needs, but the brain is tricky. Wilson looked at the pod-like chamber. It reminded him of a coffin made of metal and glass. Will it be ready in time? Peter didn't answer right away. He was known for his honesty. It has to be, he finally said. Meanwhile, the crew trained harder than any astronauts before them. They spent weeks in isolation chambers to prepare for the loneliness of space. They practiced emergency drills until they could do them half asleep. They learned everything they could about the alien signal and the star system it came from. Navigation Officer Maria Rodriguez spent hours every day in the ship simulator. With short black hair and serious brown eyes, Maria had a gift for understanding the movement of objects in space. She could plot courses in her head that took supercomputers minutes to calculate. One day, during a training exercise, the simulation threw an unexpected problem at the crew. A fake meteor storm appeared on their screens, threatening to damage the ship. Maria's fingers flew over the controls as she tried to find a safe path through. I can't avoid them all, she called out. At the engineering station, Frank Howard was trying to manage the ship's shields, but they were failing under the onslaught. Frank was the oldest member of the crew at 45, with strong hands and a calm voice even in crisis. Diverting. Power to forward shields, he said. But it wasn't enough. In the simulation, one of the meteors broke through, tearing a hole in the ship's hull. Warning alarms screamed as virtual air began to rush out into space. Daniel Phillips, the communications specialist, was closest to the damaged section. In real life, Daniel was gentle and quiet, with a young daughter he adored. But in this moment, he froze in panic. "Daniel, seal the breach," Commander Wilson shouted. But Daniel couldn't move. Maria saw what was happening and jumped from her station. She grabbed an emergency patch kit and pushed Daniel aside. Working quickly despite the simulator's artificial gravity going haywire, she managed to seal the breach before the cabin lost too much air. When the simulation ended, Daniel sat with his head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know. What happened?" Maria put a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. That's why we practice." Commander Wilson watched the exchange with thoughtful eyes. The crew needed to trust each other completely. Their lives would depend on it. Outside the training facility, the world wasn't entirely united behind the mission. Protests grew larger, in many cities. Religious groups questioned whether humans should be meddling with beings from other worlds. Signs reading "Earth First" and "The Stars Can Wait" appeared in crowds. Some politicians called for the money to be spent on Earth's problems instead. Why spend trillions to help aliens when people were suffering here? The ISA facility had to increase security as threats mounted. Dr. Samantha Lee, the medical officer for the mission, faced protesters as she arrived at work one morning. A young woman stepped in front of her car. "How can you leave us?" the woman shouted. "We need doctors here." Samantha rolled down her window. With her round face and kind eyes, she didn't look like someone's idea of a space explorer. "I'm helping create medical technology that will save lives here on Earth too," she said gently. "Everything we learn on this mission will help people here." The woman didn't look convinced, but she stepped aside. Inside the facility, Science Officer Dr. William Chen was making a breakthrough. Soft-spoken but brilliant, William had been studying the alien message for months. Today he thought he found something new. "Look at this pattern," he said to Commander Wilson and Susan Reeves, who had flown in from the UN. "The message repeats, but there are tiny variations. I think they're sending us more information about what kind of help they need." Susan leaned forward. "Can you decode it?" William nodded slowly. "I think so. It might take time, but—" He trailed off, typing rapidly on his keyboard, the screen filled with new symbols. "What is it?" Wilson asked. "If I'm right," William said, "they're telling us about a disease, something killing their people." Susan and Wilson exchanged looks. This changed things. The mission wasn't just about contact anymore. It might be about saving an entire species. As launch day approached, The crew faced the hardest part of their preparation, saying goodbye. They would be gone for years. The people they loved would age while they slept among the stars. Daniel spent every free moment with his daughter, Emma. She was 7 years old, with her father's gentle eyes and her mother's fiery red hair. Her parents were divorced, and Daniel had fought hard to stay in her life despite his demanding career. "Will you see aliens, Daddy?" Emma asked as they sat in the park near his apartment. "I hope so," Daniel said. "Good aliens who need our help." "Like superheroes," Emma said with a smile. Daniel hugged her tight. "Just like superheroes." The night before launch, a special dinner was held for the crew and their families. Commander Wilson stood to make a toast. He looked around at the faces of his crew, at their loved ones who were giving up so much. "Tomorrow, we leave everything we know behind," he said, raising his glass. "We go not for glory or conquest, but because someone asked for our help. In all of human history, there has never been a journey like the one we're about to take. I can't promise we'll all come back, but I can promise this. As long as I draw breath, I will do everything in my power to complete our mission and bring this crew home." There were tears in many eyes as glasses were raised. The room was filled with a mix of pride, fear, and wonder. Later, as the families departed and the crew prepared for their final night on Earth, Dr. Olivia Grant rushed into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Commander," she said, "we did it. The fusion drive test was successful. Full power, stable reaction. The horizon is ready." A weight seemed to lift from Wilson's shoulders. He nodded his thanks to Olivia. As dawn broke over the launch facility, 6 brave humans boarded the ISS Horizon. They strapped themselves into their seats and prepared for the most important journey in human history. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Around the world, billions watched on screens. 7, 6, 5. The massive engines began to glow with blue fire. 4, 3. The crew's hearts pounded in their chests. 2, 1. The Earth trembled as the horizon rose on a pillar of light, carrying humanity's answer to the stars. The first weeks aboard the ISS Horizon passed in a blur of activity. The crew checked and double-checked every system on the ship. They sent daily reports back to Earth, each message taking a little longer to reach home as the distance grew. Commander Jack Wilson established a strict routine. Work shifts, exercise time, meals, and rest periods were all carefully scheduled. Structure would keep them sane during the long journey ahead. "Status report," Wilson said one morning, floating into the ship's control center. In space, there was no up or down, just the constant feeling of falling that never ended. Maria Rodriguez looked up from her navigation console. "On course, Commander. All systems normal." Frank Howard nodded from his engineering station. "Fusion drive operating at 98% efficiency. Better than expected." Daniel Phillips adjusted his headset. "Last transmission from Earth. Received and decoded. They send their best wishes." Dr. Samantha Lee and Dr. William Chen were in the lab section of the ship, studying the latest data from the alien signal. The signal was stronger now that they were moving toward its source. Life settled into a rhythm aboard the Horizon. They were a small community floating through the emptiness of space. They worked, ate meals together, exercised to keep their muscles from weakening, and tried not to think about how far they were from everything they knew. 3 months into the journey, they reached the point where they would enter the special sleep chambers. Most of the journey would be spent in this suspended state. Their bodies slowed almost to a stop to conserve resources. "Final systems check complete," Frank reported. "The ship can run on automatic while we sleep." "And the emergency protocols are in place," Maria added. "If anything goes wrong, the computer will wake those of us needed to fix the problem." Dr. Lee prepared the chambers, checking each one carefully. "Everyone's medical scans look good. We're as ready as we'll ever be." That night, they shared a final meal before their long sleep. The mood was quiet as they floated around the table in the ship's small dining area. "I had a dream last night," Daniel said suddenly. "I dreamed I was home, pushing Emma on the swing in the park." His voice caught. She was older. I didn't recognize her at first. No one spoke for a moment. They all had left people behind. People who would age years while the crew slept, unchanging. We should record messages, Commander Wilson suggested. For our families. They can watch them while we sleep. They each took turns in front of the camera, speaking to loved ones billions of miles away. Some cried, some tried to be brave. All felt the weight of distance and time. The next morning, they entered the sleep chambers one by one. Dr. Lee monitored each person's vital signs as their bodies slowed, their breathing becoming shallow, their heartbeats faint but steady. Wilson was the last to enter his chamber. "Wake me if anything happens," he told Dr. Lee. "Anything at all." She nodded. "Sleep well, Commander. See you in 3 years." The lid closed over Wilson, and soon he too was in the deep sleep that would carry them across the vast emptiness between stars. But space had other plans. 6 months later, warning alarms blared throughout the ship. The computer system following its programming began to wake 2 members of the crew, Frank Howard and Commander Wilson. Frank woke first, disoriented and groggy. His sleep chamber opened with a soft hiss. "What's happening?" he mumbled, his mouth dry, his mind foggy. The ship's computer answered in its calm voice. "Radiation alert. Unexpected field detected in ship's path. Course adjustment needed." Frank pulled himself from the chamber, his muscles weak from months of inactivity. He floated to the nearest console to check the readings. "Oh, that's not good," he whispered. Commander Wilson joined him soon after. "Report," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "We're approaching some kind of radiation field," Frank explained, more alert now. "Nothing like this showed up in our star charts. It's massive, and we're headed right for it." The 2 men worked quickly to understand the danger. The field was like a vast cloud in space, invisible to the eye but deadly to the ship's systems and potentially to the sleeping crew. "We need to change course," Wilson decided. "The nav system can't plot a safe path automatically," Frank said, studying the readings. "The field is too complex. We need Maria." They woke Navigation Officer Rodriguez next. Like them, she was weak and disoriented at first, but recovered quickly when she understood the situation. "I need at least 6 hours to plot a safe course," she said after reviewing the data. "This radiation field has strange patterns, almost like it's moving." "We don't have 6 hours," Frank said grimly. "At our current speed, we'll hit the edge of the field in 3. Wilson made the hard call. "Slow the ship. Full reverse thrust." The horizon shuddered as its engines fired in the opposite direction, slowing their approach to the mysterious field. But the maneuver put enormous strain on the fusion drive. "Temperature rising in the main reactor," Frank warned, his eyes fixed on the flashing indicators. "If it goes critical, we'll lose the drive." With careful adjustments, they managed to bring the ship to a near stop at the edge of the radiation field. Maria worked frantically to calculate a path around it while Frank fought to cool the overheated engine. "The fusion containment is failing," Frank reported after 2 hours of nonstop work. "I need to go outside and manually vent the excess heat." "That's too dangerous," Wilson argued. "The radiation levels outside the ship are too high. If I don't, we lose the engine. If we lose the engine, we're stranded here forever." Frank's face was grim but determined. Wilson knew he was right. "I'm coming with you." They put on their spacesuits, heavy protective gear designed for just such emergencies. The suits would shield them from the radiation, but not completely. Every minute outside the ship would expose them to danger. Maria watched anxiously from the control room as the 2 men stepped into the airlock. "Be careful," she said over the radio. "I've almost got our new course plotted." Outside, floating in the emptiness of space, Commander Wilson and Frank worked quickly to reach the external cooling vents. The stars surrounded them, countless points of light in the endless black. The radiation field loomed nearby, invisible, but detected by their suit sensors as an ominous danger zone. Frank's hands moved with practiced skill as he manually opened the cooling vents. Hot plasma vented into space in a beautiful, dangerous stream of blue-white light. Containment temperature dropping, Maria confirmed over the radio. It's working. Just as they finished, Frank's suit sensor began to beep urgently. Radiation spike, he warned. We need to get back inside now. They hurried back to the airlock, but as they reached it, another alarm sounded. Part of the radiation field had shifted, reaching tendrils toward the ship like some vast living thing. The field is expanding. Maria's voice was tense. Hurry! They made it inside just as the first waves of intense radiation washed over the ship. The Horizon's shield strained under the assault but held. Once safely back in the control room, they worked together to implement Maria's new course. The ship slowly turned, its engines carefully firing to guide them around the deadly field. We did it, Maria said as they cleared the danger. The 3 exhausted crew members floated in the control room, their bodies still weak from the long sleep and the sudden crisis. We should wake the others, Frank suggested. Tell them what happened. Wilson shook his head. No, let them sleep. We'll handle regular monitoring shifts between the 3 of us until we're well clear of this region. Then we'll go back to sleep ourselves. For the next month, Wilson, Frank, and Maria took turns watching over the ship. During their off hours, they recorded video logs, exercised to rebuild their strength, and tried not to think about home. One night, unable to sleep, Wilson found Maria in the observation dome, a small bubble of transparent aluminum where the crew could look out at the stars. What do you think we'll find? She asked as he floated up beside her. When we reach them. Wilson was silent for a moment, staring at the distant points of light. I don't know, but whatever it is, I believe it was worth waking up for. Eventually, the danger passed. The 3 crew members returned to their sleep chambers, joining their still slumbering colleagues. As the ship's computer monitored their vital signs, the ISS Horizon continued its journey through the stars, carrying humanity's answer to a desperate call for help. The gentle hiss of the sleep chamber's opening was the first sound the crew of the ISS Horizon heard after 3 years of dreamless sleep. One by one, they woke, groggy and disoriented. Final approach initiated, the ship's computer announced, in its calm voice. Estimated arrival, 6 hours, 22 minutes. Commander Wilson was the first to fully wake, his mind clearing faster than his body could move. Dr. Lee helped each crew member through the revival process, checking vital signs and administering medicine to help with the side effects of long sleep. How do you feel? She asked Daniel Phillips as he sat up slowly in his chamber. Like I've been hit by a truck, he mumbled, his voice hoarse from years of disuse. Are we there? Almost, Dr. Lee said with a small smile. We made it, Daniel. Once, everyone was awake and had eaten their first real meal in years. They gathered in the control room. Through the main viewport they could see it, the alien star, much like Earth's sun but with a slightly reddish tint. Around it orbited several planets, one of which was their destination. Status report, Commander Wilson ordered, settling into his chair. All systems operational, Frank reported from engineering. The ship performed beautifully during the sleep phase. Long-range scans of the planet show signs of civilization, Dr. Chen added, studying his screens. But something's not right. What do you mean? Wilson asked, feeling a flutter of concern. Dr. Chen adjusted some settings on his console. I'm detecting massive energy disturbances on the surface. Radiation levels are extremely high in some areas. And look at these atmospheric readings. The crew crowded around his screen. The data showed a planet in turmoil, violent storms, unusual temperature patterns, and radiation that shouldn't be there naturally. What happened to them? Maria whispered. No one had an answer, as the horizon continued its approach. As they got closer, they could see the planet more clearly on their screens. Large parts of it were covered in swirling clouds, while others showed the scars of massive destruction. I'm detecting an artificial structure in orbit, Frank announced suddenly. It appears to be some kind of satellite or small station. As they approached the object, it sent a signal to their ship. Daniel worked quickly to decode it. It's a warning beacon, he said, his face pale. It's telling any approaching ships that the planet below is under quarantine. There's a disease and something else. He paused, looking up. It mentions something called the Volk. Can you respond to it? Wilson asked. Tell them who we are and why we've come? Daniel nodded and sent a message. Minutes later, they received a reply. They're asking us to approach coordinates on the far side of the planet, Daniel reported. There's a settlement there protected by some kind of shield. They say it's safe from the radiation. Commander Wilson looked around at his crew. They had traveled 17 light years to answer a call for help. Now they faced an unknown situation with potential dangers they hadn't prepared for. Take us in, he ordered Maria. Careful approach to those coordinates. The horizon moved slowly into orbit around the alien world. As they circled to the far side, they saw it, a dome of shimmering energy covering a small area on the surface. Within it, they could make out buildings and movement. They're hailing us, Daniel said, adjusting his headset. Video transmission. The main screen flickered, and then they saw them, the aliens who had called for help across the stars. They were humanoid, but clearly not human. Taller and more slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly from within. Their eyes were large, with no visible pupils, just orbs of deep purple. They had no hair, and their features were delicate, almost fragile-looking. One of them stepped forward, speaking in a melodic voice. Thanks to years of studying their language from the signal, the ship's computer could translate. Greetings, people of Earth, the alien said. I am Kalari, leader of the remaining Lirani. You have answered our call when we had almost lost hope. Welcome. Commander Wilson stood straighter. I am Commander Jack Wilson of the International Space Agency vessel Horizon. We received your message asking for help. We've come to provide whatever assistance we can. Kalari's expression was hard to read, but the translator detected emotions in the voice tone. We are grateful, but you must understand what has happened since we sent our call across the stars. Over the next hour, the Lirani explained their situation. Their civilization had once covered the planet, with billions of people living in great cities. They had been peaceful, focusing on art, science, and exploration of their own solar system. But they weren't alone in this part of the galaxy. Another species, the Folk, had discovered them. The Folk were conquerors who took resources from other worlds to fuel their expanding empire. When the Lirani refused to submit, the Folk attacked. They bombed our cities from orbit, Kalari explained, the translator catching the grief in the alien's voice. When that was not enough, they released a biological weapon, a disease engineered to kill only our kind. How many survived? Dr. Lee asked gently. Less than 10,000, Kalari answered. We are all that remains of our civilization, protected by this shield. The technology was experimental before the attack. We managed to perfect it in time to save a small fraction of our people. And the disease? Dr. Lee pressed. Is it still active? Yes. It is why we called for help. Our scientists developed treatments that can keep it at bay but not cure it. We are slowly dying even within our shield. The crew of the Horizon looked at each other. They had come prepared to help with natural disasters, to share technology, to provide medical aid. But this was far beyond what they had expected. Why did you reach out to Earth specifically? Commander Wilson asked. We're far less advanced than your people. Or these Volk. Kalari made a gesture the translator identified as something like a sad smile. We observed your species for many years before sending our call. You fight amongst yourselves, yes, but you also show something rare. Unity in the face of crisis, compassion for those who suffer, and most importantly, defiance when faced with impossible odds. Daniel leaned forward. The Folk, are they still here? Will they return? They left, after they believed they had destroyed us. But they patrol this sector of space. They will return eventually. The implications were clear. By answering the Lirani's call, humanity had potentially made a powerful enemy. Dr. Lee spoke up. I'd like to study your disease. Maybe fresh eyes could see something your scientists missed. Dr. Chen nodded eagerly. And I'd like to learn more about your shield technology. It could be adapted to protect Earth if these Volk ever discovered our planet. Commander Wilson made a decision. We came to help, and that's what we'll do. Dr. Lee will work with your medical team. Dr. Chen and Frank will study your defensive technology. Maria and Daniel will analyze the Volk threat, their movements, strengths, weaknesses. And you, Commander? Kalari asked. Wilson stood tall, his face determined. I'll prepare our ship and crew for the possibility that the Volk return while we're here. We won't run, and we won't hide. The horizon carries the best of what humanity has to offer. Not just our technology, but our courage and our will to stand against bullies, no matter how powerful they may be. Kalari's large eyes seemed to shine with something like hope. Then, perhaps our call across the stars was answered just in time, not only to save what remains of the Lorani, but to prepare your world for what may come. The crew of the Horizon spent the next weeks working closely with the Lorani. Dr. Lee made breakthroughs with the disease, developing treatments that would extend the aliens' lives. Frank and Dr. Chen studied the shield technology, finding ways to improve it and adapt it for Earth's defenses. But everyone knew the peaceful work could end at any moment. The Folk would return, and when they did, they would find something unexpected. A ship from a distant world, crewed by beings who had crossed the stars not for conquest, but to help those in need. Humanity had answered the call, and soon the stars would indeed tremble.